The plot of Yesterday follows a struggling musician named Jack Malik who has no following. The only support he has is from his friends and his manager Ellie, who is also his love interest. One night, he gets involved in a bus accident during a mysterious global blackout, and then wakes up the next day to find out that no one but him remembers who a little unknown band called the Beatles are. He then decides to take advantage of the fact that no one knows who they are and launch his musical career. Yesterday was a film I was looking forward to, with some of the reasons being that it had a great director with Danny Boyle attached to it, it would prominently feature music from the Beatles, who are arguably the best and most influential band of all time, and it had a really unique premise. It sounded like a plot of an episode of Twilight Zone, but just under the disguise of a romantic comedy musical. However, the movie doesn't quite live up to its amazing premise. The performances in Yesterday are pretty decent. Himesh Patel does a fine job as the main protagonist, Jack, and Lily James gives a solid performance as his love interest, Ellie. Both of them have pretty good chemistry, even though I do think Himesh Patel lacked the charisma and screen presence to really be an interesting protagonist that we can root for. Ed Sheeran also appears in this movie, and he does an okay job of playing a fictionalized version of himself, even though I feel like he steals a lot of the spotlight from the character Jack. The best performance in the film is Kate McKinnon as a snarky and greedy music agent named Deborah. She was a lot of fun to watch and gets a lot of good laughs. The comedy in Yesterday is for the most part pretty good. There are a lot of funny jokes from the main characters trying to explain to people about the Beatles and other things that don't exist that make them confused. Granted, it's usually the same setup and payoff for most of the jokes, but they work. There's also some satire in the music and the history of how Jack is treated by Kate McKinnon, and how people look at his music that was mostly good. And there are also a few great parodies of the Beatles songs and album covers throughout the film. Sadly, those are really the only good things about this movie. Yesterday's biggest flaw is shockingly the execution of its premise. As I stated earlier, this film has a really unique and interesting premise, but it never quite lives up to that and feels incredibly underdeveloped. This film could have explored the idea of what would happen if the Beatles never existed, and all the musicians and bands that would never exist without them. Now the music industry would be the day without their music, but not once has it ever tried to explore those ideas. If it had, this would have been a much more interesting and engaging movie. Speaking of the Beatles, I was surprised at how little they actually contribute to this film. Sure, their music is featured and they talk about how great they are, but they feel more like a plot device for the main character to achieve his success and tell this needlessly complex romance. The film also never explicitly states why the Beatles' music is so amazing to begin with. Obviously, most of us know that the Beatles are incredible, but this film just tells you that they're amazing and expects you to take it as a fact and not as an opinion. I can give a few reasons why the Beatles are great. They wrote many incredible songs that have catchy melodies and poetic lyrics, experimented with many musical genres and succeeded, redefined the genres of rock and pop not once but twice, and have enough variety with every album and song of theirs for any listener to enjoy. I could give many more reasons why the Beatles are amazing, but I won't since that would take too long. At least I explained why they're so great, unlike this movie. The central romance in Yesterday is also pretty cookie-cutter and cliched. As I stated earlier, Himesh Patel and Lily James give decent performances and both of them have pretty good chemistry, but their romance has been done better in plenty of other movies and feels redundant. This film was written by Richard Curtis, who is well known for writing critically acclaimed romantic comedies like Four Weddings and a Funeral, Notting Hill, and Love Actually, so you expect something different and unique from this film, but that's not the case. It feels very bland, which I can also say the same thing for Danny Boyle's direction. Danny Boyle is known for directing highly regarded films like Trainspotting, 28 Days Later, Slumdog Millionaire, and 127 Hours, one of which won him the Academy Award for Best Director. So what happened here? The direction isn't awful, but it's bland, and there are some weird stylistic choices that don't make sense at all and add nothing to the movie. Why were there so many Dutch angles when they did nothing to add in the movie and were distracting? I would really like to ask Boyle why he thought that was a good idea. Yesterday also never bothers to explain how this blackout erases certain things from existing like the Beatles. How come Jack is the only person to remember who they are? Is he an alternate timeline? How does he possibly remember every lyric and musical composition from every Beatles song ever, aside from Eleanor Rigby? Unless he has an incredible eidetic memory, it's just not plausible at all, since the movie feels too realistic to be a fancy musical. I know I'm nitpicking a lot, but this stuff just bugged me so much. In conclusion, Yesterday was an incredibly disappointing and lackluster movie that had so much great potential that was squandered. This film has a great premise, a talented director and writer attached to it, and features music from one of, if not the greatest band of all time, and they blew it. I wanted to like this film, but it was just too underdeveloped and shallow for me to enjoy, and just comes off as a bland crowd pleaser that could have been something special. I remember watching this film yesterday, but by tomorrow, I will probably more than likely forget about it and move on with my life. I am giving Yesterday a C-.